My friends, life is not just about survival, it is about rising. Every single one of us has been built with the inner strength to rise above challenges. And every single one of us has been born with the potential to lead, not by controlling others, but by inspiring them. Think about it. When you fall, it doesn't mean you are weak. Falling is proof that you are trying, that you are walking, that you are moving forward. A baby takes its first steps, falls again and again, and still gets up. Why? Because rising is in our very nature. We were built to rise. Now, leadership is not about a position or a title. A crown on your head doesn't make you a leader. The real crown is when people trust you, when they are inspired by you, when your actions give them courage to believe in themselves. That is why we say, you are born to lead, not to rule, but to serve, to guide, to uplift. But what stops us? It's the voice inside our head that says, I can't do it. It's the fear of failure. It's the worry about what people will think. My friends, those who rise are not those who never fear, but those who walk through fear. Those who lead are not those who never fall, but those who rise again and help others rise with them. You don't need a stage to be a leader. You don't need a title to inspire someone. A kind word to a stranger, a helping hand to a friend, or a smile in the middle of someone's storm. These are the acts of true leadership. Remember, your strength is not measured by how many times you fall, but by how many times you rise. Your greatness is not measured by how many people follow you, but by how many people feel lifted because of you. Life is not just survival. It is about rising above challenges. Survival is the instinct of every living being. Whether it's a plant breaking through the soil, a bird finding food, or a human being struggling through hardships. But if survival was the only goal, then life would be very mechanical, very routine. Almost like a machine that only functions to keep running. Human life, however, is not designed in that way. We are gifted with emotions, with vision, with dreams, and with the capacity to rise beyond the ordinary struggles of existence. The difference between survival and rising lies in purpose. Survival is about getting through the day, while rising is about turning the day into something meaningful, something worth remembering, and something that leaves an imprint not only in your heart, but in the hearts of others. When we only focus on survival, life becomes a cycle of waking up, working, eating, sleeping, and repeating. It is necessary, of course, but it doesn't fulfill the deeper hunger within us. The hunger for growth, for significance, for progress. Rising is when you decide that your hardships will not break you, but build you. Rising is when you look at challenges not as walls that block you, but as steps that elevate you. Every problem that comes your way is not designed to destroy you. It is designed to shape you to prepare you for the heights you were meant to reach. If you think about it, some of the strongest people you know are not those who had it easy. They are those who went through storms, yet came out with strength and grace. Life will test you. You will face days when everything seems dark, when nothing makes sense, and when the weight of problems feels unbearable. In those moments, survival keeps you alive. But rising keeps you alive with dignity, with strength, and with faith. Rising means refusing to let your failures define you. Rising means believing that every setback is a setup for a greater comeback. Rising means choosing not to stay down even when the world expects you to give up. Think of an eagle. It faces storms like no other bird. While other birds hide during the storm, the eagle spreads its wings and uses the same storm winds to fly higher. That is what rising is about. Instead of letting difficulties push you down, you use them to lift yourself higher. Human beings were designed with that same power. Every storm in your life carries the wind you can use to reach your next level. If you see people who live only for survival, you will notice something. They are often tired, unfulfilled, and restless. But those who rise, even with the same circumstances, seem energized, motivated, and impactful. The difference is not the situation. The difference is the decision they made. One person says, "I'll just get through this." The other says, "I'll grow through this." That is the mindset of rising. So, life is not just about putting food on the table, paying bills, or managing responsibilities. Yes, these are part of life, but they are not the entirety of life. Rising is when you transform your duties into opportunities, your struggles into strength, and your existence into an inspiration. Rising is not something extraordinary. It is simply choosing to go one step beyond survival every single day. And that choice makes all the difference between just existing and truly living. Falling is proof of effort, not weakness. Every time we attempt something in life, there is always a chance that we might stumble or fail. Yet, isn't it true that those who never attempt never fail? And isn't it equally true that those who never fail never grow? Falling is often seen as a sign of defeat, as if it reflects something lacking in us. But in reality, falling simply means that you dare to move, you dare to try, and you dare to step into the unknown. The person who sits comfortably and never ventures out may look stable, but they will never know what they are truly capable of achieving. Imagine a child learning to walk. If falling were a sign of weakness, then every child would remain crawling for life. But we applaud the child when they fall because we know it is part of the process. Each fall is one step closer to balance, one step closer to independence, one step closer to strength. The same principle applies to us at every stage of life, whether it's in our careers, our relationships, or our personal growth. Each fall carries within it the lesson and strength we need to rise higher. We live in a society that celebrates success but often hides failure. We showcase the victories, the achievements, the shining moments, but we rarely talk about the countless times we fell before getting there. Behind every successful athlete are thousands of hours of failed attempts, missed shots, and painful defeats. Behind every thriving business person are failed ventures, bad decisions, and sleepless nights of doubt. Yet none of these falls made them weak. In fact, those falls became the foundation of their eventual strength. The truth is, falling is evidence of movement. If you fall, it means you stepped forward. It means you dared to go beyond your comfort zone. And that is something to honor, not to be ashamed of. Weakness is not in falling. Weakness is in refusing to get up after you fall. Strength is not in never making mistakes. Strength is in learning from each mistake and continuing forward. Think of a seed planted in the soil. From the outside, it looks like the seed has been buried, suffocated, and lost. But in reality, that fall into the soil is the very thing that allows it to grow. The darkness, the pressure, the covering of earth. All of these are not signs of weakness, but conditions for growth. The same applies to us. When we fall into difficulties, it may feel dark and heavy. But those moments are preparing us for growth we could not achieve otherwise. Falling also teaches humility. It reminds us that no matter how strong or capable we are still human. It softens our pride, deepens our empathy, and helps us connect with others who fall. You cannot truly encourage someone else to rise unless you have fallen yourself. That is why the greatest leaders, the most inspiring people, are not those who never failed, but those who failed and still stood up again with courage and compassion. So, the next time you fall, don't label yourself as weak. Instead, remind yourself that falling is evidence that you are in motion, that you are on the path of growth. Every scar, every stumble, and every failure is simply proof that you are alive, learning and daring to move forward. Falling is not the end. It is a sign that you are still in the game, still striving, and still on the journey toward rising. Rising is our natural instinct. We are built for it. From the very moment we are born, life teaches us this lesson. A newborn doesn't know how to walk, how to talk, or even how to feed itself properly. Yet within it is a built-in drive to grow, to rise from helplessness into strength, from silence into expression, from crawling to walking. No one teaches a child to try again after falling, and no one needs to. The instinct to rise is already there, placed deep within the human spirit. It is proof that rising is not an option given to a few. It is the essence of who we all are. Look at nature, and you will see the same truth reflected everywhere. A tiny blade of grass cracks through concrete to reach the sunlight. A tree battered by storms bends but still stands tall. The sun sets every evening, only to rise again with certainty the next morning. Everything in creation carries these patterns. Setbacks are never the end. They are part of a cycle that leads to renewal, growth, and elevation. If nature itself reflects this instinct to rise, how much more must it be ingrained within us? When we go through hardships, we sometimes forget this natural design. We start to believe that our struggles mean we are not strong enough, or that our failures mean we are not worthy. But deep inside, there is always that voice, that whisper of resilience reminding us that we are capable of getting back up. Even in the darkest of times, we find a spark of courage that pushes us to take just one more step. That is not an accident. That is the instinct to rise. Throughout history, every great individual has shown this pattern. Inventors, leaders, visionaries, and changemakers all had one thing in common: the refusal to stay down. They understood that rising is not extraordinary, it is the natural order of progress. When Thomas Edison failed thousands of times before inventing the light bulb, he didn't treat those failures as defeats, but as part of the process of rising. When leaders faced rejection, betrayal, or setbacks, they didn't let those moments define them. They simply tapped into that built-in instinct to rise again. This instinct also reveals itself in ordinary people in extraordinary ways. Think of someone who loses everything: career, home, relationships, and yet finds the courage to start over. Think of someone who suffers physically, but still wakes up each day with determination to live fully. These stories are reminders that rising is not only for a few special people, it is for everyone. It is the natural rhythm of the human soul. The challenge is not whether we have the ability to rise. The challenge is whether we will listen to that inner voice when life tells us to stay down. Too often, we silence our instinct with doubt, fear, or negativity. But when we choose to trust that inner strength, we realize that we are far more capable than we believed. Rising doesn't mean we never feel pain or discouragement. It simply means we don't allow pain to be the final chapter of our story. We are all built with a kind of inner spring. You can press it down, you can push it with pressure, but the moment that pressure eases, it bounces back to its original position. That is us. No matter how heavy the world presses on us, we are designed to return, to bounce back, to rise higher. This resilience is not something we need to manufacture. It is already within us. Our job is only to awaken it, trust it, and live by it. Leadership is not about a title, but about trust and inspiration. Too often, we associate leadership with positions, ranks, or designations. We look at the corner office, the stage, or the person at the top of the hierarchy, and assume that leadership is tied to authority, in thee. But if leadership were only about titles, then the moment someone loses that position, their influence would vanish. True leadership, however, does not depend on where you sit in an organization or what label is attached to your name. It depends on the kind of trust you build and the inspiration you spark in others. Think about the most impactful people in your life. They may not have been CEOs or presidents. They might have been a teacher who believed in you when no one else did, a parent who encouraged you during your toughest days, or even a friend who lifted you when you were down. They didn't have formal authority over you, yet their words and actions guided you. Why? Because they built trust, and that trust made you open your heart to their influence. Leadership without trust is like a lamp without electricity. It looks impressive on the outside, but it cannot give light. Inspiration works in the same way. You cannot demand respect or loyalty simply by holding a title. You earn it by inspiring others, by showing them a vision that is greater than their fear, and by living as an example of what is possible. Leadership is never about commanding people to follow. It is about walking a path so courageously that people naturally want to walk beside you. When someone inspires you, they awaken something inside you. Courage, hope, determination. And that spark is far more powerful than any order or instruction. History gives us countless examples. Some of the world's most remembered leaders didn't always start with official authority. Mahatma Gandhi held no position of political power, yet he inspired millions to rise with non-violence. Mother Teresa never chased a title, yet her compassion led to global movements of service. Their leadership came from the trust people placed in them and the inspiration they radiated. They taught us that influence grows not from titles, but from authenticity and integrity. Even in daily life, the same principle applies. In families, parents who lead with fear or control may see obedience, but they rarely see trust. On the other hand, parents who lead with love, consistency, and example earn the trust of their children, and that trust becomes a lasting bond of influence. In workplaces, a manager may demand performance, but only a true leader inspires commitment. Employees may work for salaries, but they give their hearts only to leaders they trust. The truth is, titles can be taken away, but trust and inspiration endure. They stay with people long after your words are spoken or your presence is gone. That is why leadership is not about standing above others. It is about walking with them in such a way that they feel stronger, braver, and more hopeful because of you. Real leaders don't create followers, they create more leaders. They don't stand on a pedestal, they stand among the people, lifting them to rise higher. So, leadership is not measured by the nameplate on your door or the applause you receive. It is measured by the quiet impact you leave in the lives of people who say, "Because of you, I didn't give up." That is the kind of leadership that cannot be granted by any organization or system It comes only from living with trustworthiness and becoming a source of inspiration. True leadership is about service, not control. Far too often, people mistake leadership for power, the ability to give orders, to make decisions for others, or to command respect. But control breeds fear, and fear may create compliance, but never commitment. Service, on the other hand, breeds trust, loyalty, and love. A true leader is not the one who stands at the top and demands obedience. A true leader is the one who stoops down to lift others, who serves with humility, and who places the needs of others before their own. If you look at some of the greatest figures in history, you will notice a pattern. They didn't dominate their people, they served them. They did not demand to be followed. People followed them willingly because they saw genuine care, compassion, and sacrifice. Service has a magnetic quality. It draws people closer because deep down, every human being longs to be valued and cared for. A leader who serves creates an environment where people feel safe, respected, and empowered. And in that environment, individuals naturally give their best. Control can never achieve that. Control may force short-term results, but it destroys creativity, freedom, and passion. When people are forced, they work with hesitation. But when people are served, they work with inspiration. This is why the best leaders are not remembered for their ability to control, but for their willingness to give. Their names live on not because of authority they held, but because of love they shared. Leadership through service requires humility. It takes strength to step back and say, "This is not about me. It's about those I lead." Humility does not mean weakness. It means you are strong enough to place others first. Think of a gardener who serves the plants. The gardener doesn't control the flowers into blooming. Instead, they water, nurture, and protect them. And in return, the garden flourishes. A servant leader works in the same way, creating the right conditions, removing obstacles, and encouraging growth. In everyday life, we see this principle clearly. A teacher who truly serves their students goes beyond teaching the syllabus. They invest in the child's confidence, values, and future. A doctor who serves patients doesn't just prescribe medicine, they listen, comfort, and encourage. A parent who serves their family doesn't just provide food and shelter. They create an atmosphere of love and security. These are all acts of leadership built on service, not control. What makes service so powerful is that it creates lasting influence. When you serve others, they remember not just what you did, but how you made them feel. They may forget your words. They may forget your actions, but they will never forget the feeling of being uplifted, valued, and cared for. That feeling becomes the foundation of loyalty, and loyalty creates legacies. So many people chase power and control, but both are temporary. Positions can be lost. Power can be taken away. Authority can fade with time. But the impact of service lasts forever, long after titles are forgotten. Acts of service remain engraved in the hearts of those who experienced them. That is why true leadership is not about controlling people, but about serving them in such a way that they rise higher, become stronger, and find the courage to lead others in return. Fear and doubt are obstacles, but rising means moving forward despite them. Fear is something every human being experiences. It is not a sign of weakness. It is a natural response to uncertainty, risk, and the unknown. Doubt, too, is something we all face. Questions about whether we are capable, whether we are worthy, or whether we will succeed. If we wait for a day when fear and doubt completely disappear, we will wait forever because they are part of life. The secret is not to eliminate fear, but to move forward in spite of it. The real courage lies in action taken with trembling hands and an uncertain heart. Think about the first time you tried to learn something new: riding a bicycle, swimming, speaking in front of a crowd. The fear of falling, drowning, or making mistakes was real. But the moment you chose to take that step anyway, you discovered something. The fear was big in your mind, but it became smaller with every action you took. That is the nature of fear. It grows when you avoid it and shrinks when you face it. Rising, therefore, is not about waiting to feel fearless. It is about deciding that your purpose is greater than your fear. Doubt often works hand in hand with fear. It whispers, "What if you fail? What if you're not good enough? What will people say?" These voices can be loud, and they can paralyze us if we give them too much attention. But doubt also has another side. It challenges us to prepare better, to grow stronger, and to prove to ourselves what we are capable of. Some of the most remarkable achievements in the world happened because people ignored their doubts long enough to take the leap. They understood that clarity comes after action, not before it. Rising through fear and doubt requires perspective. When you see challenges as opportunities for growth rather than threats to your identity, fear loses its grip. When you remind yourself that failure is not the opposite of success, but part of the journey to success, doubt loses its sting. The people who rise are not those who never worry. They are those who take one step forward, even when worry tries to hold them back. History is filled with such stories. Great leaders who stood up for justice were afraid of losing their lives, yet they marched forward. Inventors who created groundbreaking technologies had doubts about whether the world would accept them, but they persevered anyway. Artists, entrepreneurs, and change makers all walked through fear and doubt to create something that inspired generations. Their lives remind us that courage is not the absence of fear. It is choosing to rise above it. On a personal level, we can see this truth in everyday situations. Someone battling illness faces fear every day, but by waking up and fighting again, they rise. A student afraid of failure still sits for the exam and discovers new strength. An employee doubtful about their abilities still takes on a challenging project and grows in the process. These are not grand headline-making events, but they are powerful reminders that ordinary people rise daily by facing fears and doubts with determination. Fear and doubt will always knock at the door of your heart, but you don't have to invite them in to stay. You acknowledge them, but you choose to move forward anyway. And with each step forward, your courage grows, your faith deepens, and your resilience strengthens. Rising is not the absence of fear, it is the daily choice to move, to grow, and to live fully in spite of it. Leaders are not flawless. They fall but rise again and uplift others. There is a common misconception that great leaders are people who never make mistakes, never face setbacks, and never feel weak. But in reality, the opposite is true. The most admired leaders throughout history were not perfect beings. They stumbled, they failed, and they had moments of doubt. What made them stand out was not the absence of failure, but their willingness to get up again and use their experience to guide others. Their scars became their credentials, and their resilience became their message. Perfection does not inspire people, authenticity does. When you see someone who always seems flawless, it may impress you for a moment, but it does not connect with you deeply. But when you see someone who has faced hardships, fallen and yet risen with grace and strength, you feel a sense of hope. You realize that if they can rise, so can you. That is why leaders who are open about their failures and struggles have the most impact. They remind others that falling is not the end, but part of the journey. True leadership is not about standing on a pedestal and pretending to be untouchable. It is about walking through the mud of life, falling into the same pits as others, and then showing them how to climb out. When a leader admits, "I have failed too, but I rose again," they become relatable. People no longer see them as distant figures, but as fellow travelers on the same road. Someone who understands pain, loss, and doubt. This is what makes their encouragement real and powerful. When leaders rise after falling, they don't just uplift themselves. They create a path for others to follow. Their resilience becomes a map. Their courage becomes a lamp. Their story becomes a bridge for others who are struggling in silence. Imagine someone who has battled financial loss and managed to rebuild their life. When they share their journey, they give hope to others who are drowning in debt. Imagine someone who has faced rejection after rejection, yet eventually found success. Their story becomes a source of strength for someone ready to give up. In this way, a leader's rise is never just personal, it is collective. Falling also adds depth to a leader's character. Without failure, a person may lack empathy. But when you have known what it means to lose, to struggle, or to be broken, you develop a heart that understands. Such a heart does not look down on others who are struggling. Instead, it bends down to lift them. This is the essence of leadership, not standing above people, but standing with them and reminding them that rising is possible. Even in everyday life, this principle applies. A parent who admits their mistakes teaches their children that it's okay to fail and grow. A teacher who shares how they struggle in school inspires students to keep trying. A manager who owns up to errors earns the trust of their team. In each of these cases, the leader's imperfection becomes the source of their influence because it connects, inspires, and uplifts. The truth is, people do not need leaders who look perfect. They need leaders who look human. They need leaders who can say, "I fell too, but I found a way to stand again, and so can you." That is the kind of leadership that transforms lives. A leader's greatest power is not in never falling, but in rising after the fall and lighting the way for others who are trying to do the same. Leadership doesn't require a stage. Small acts of kindness are true leadership. Many people think leadership begins only when you have a large audience, a microphone in hand, or thousands of followers. They assume that to lead, you must have visibility, status, or influence on a grand scale. But the truth is, leadership is not measured by the size of your platform. It is measured by the size of your impact, no matter how small it may seem. A simple smile, a listening ear, or a helping hand at the right moment can change someone's entire day and perhaps even their life. That is leadership in its purest form. Consider this: a person who offers encouragement to a friend going through a tough time is practicing leadership, because they are lifting someone up and giving them hope. A teacher who notices a quiet student struggling and gently guides them is practicing leadership, because they are creating an environment where growth is possible. A stranger who helps carry someone's heavy load or holds the door open is practicing leadership, because they are showing care and respect. These small actions might not make headlines, but they build ripples of kindness that spread further than we can imagine. True leadership is about influence, not position. And influence is created in the moments where no one is watching, in the choices that seem ordinary. When you choose to be kind instead of indifferent, patient instead of harsh, giving instead of selfish, you are leading by example. You are silently showing others a better way to live. Leadership in small acts is powerful because it is sincere. It is not done for recognition or applause, but simply because it is right. Think about how often we underestimate these small actions. A single word of encouragement might stop someone from giving up. A small gesture of kindness might restore someone's faith in humanity. A little time spent listening might save someone from loneliness. These are not grand, dramatic events, but they are leadership in action. By stepping into the needs of others and offering even the smallest form of help, you are leading them toward hope, strength, and positivity. The beauty of leadership through small acts is that it is accessible to everyone. You don't need wealth, status, or titles to show kindness. You don't need formal training or authority to inspire someone through your example. Every person, regardless of their position in life, has the opportunity to lead each day. When you choose integrity over dishonesty, compassion over indifference, and forgiveness over resentment, you are leading the people around you, your family, your colleagues, your friends, towards something better. Leadership without a stage is also deeply authentic. When you perform small acts of kindness, you are not doing them for attention. You are doing them because they reflect your values. And authenticity has a quiet power that draws people in. People are more influenced by how you treat them than by what you say on a stage. They may forget your words, but they will always remember how you made them feel. So many people wait for the big moment to lead, when they are promoted, when they are recognized, or when they are given authority. But the truth is, leadership opportunities surround us every single day. Every interaction is a chance to lead through kindness. Every challenge is a chance to lead through patience. Every difficulty is a chance to lead through resilience. When you practice leadership in small, consistent ways, you build a legacy far greater than any title or stage could ever offer. In the True leadership is not about how many people see you. It is about how many people feel your positive influence. Even in the smallest of ways,